Hey there, good morning. So, this morning I want to talk about the topic of practice. The searches that I pulled up when I looked for videos on practice on the internet were all about music. Made perfect sense to me. There's a lot of people who need to tell their students to practice music. And the thing that I guess shocked me a little bit is while practice as just a concept and a word means so much to me, I don't think that we always allow ourselves to use the word in a way which reminds us of how important it is. Um, we think of practice only as this slogging, frustrating action of repetition that for some reason I would be foolish to try to conjecture why, but for some reason has taken this role in our language as a negative, right? To practice things in more often than not is something that we don't look forward to. And so I want to, if I can, just kind of shift the frame on practice from something we do to the way that we engage with really anything, as far as I'm concerned. So the ways that I come at practice in terms of my own thinking on it is first and foremost informed by the Zen aphorism, cut wood, carry water. Cut wood, carry water. Now, this references an old story, right? It's a phrase that is in and of itself meant to reference an old Zen teaching story. But the truth, the underlying essence of cut wood, carry water is that wood generates heat, right? It's right behind me. Water allows us to live. And so they stand in for basic needs, right? That which is most important for sustaining life. And for me as a practitioner of the things that I have practiced throughout my life, practice for me is simultaneously an acknowledgement of humility, in that engaging in practice acknowledges that we have something to learn, that we get to learn. For me, right, a grateful humility is, oh, what an amazing opportunity to learn from this moment, learn from this instance, learn from this. But I think, there's another aphorism which I hear more repeated actually by doctors than anything else, but I practice medicine. I don't know medicine. So I think the framework of a doctor, right? When we see someone, oh, you're a doctor, so you're done. I think anybody who works in any sort of high skill profession can attest to the fact that it is a practice. That each day we have to get up and continue to push our knowledge. We have to continue to push our practice of the skill set that we are attempting to master. And through that exploration of the material constantly as a life practice, we grow in our mastery. So this idea of practice as something that sustains basic function, right, at its most basic level, practice is what we do that sustains our life. So for us here, life is our greatest practice, right? Life is our most profoundly challenging practice. I might be able to get really, really good at a particular art or a particular science or a particular form of expression, but how is it that I am sustaining my basic functions, right? So the cut wood, carry water. This idea that to practice in a daily capacity is constantly a reminder of my humble learning and practice of whatever craft, whatever art, whatever science we want to say we are engaging with. But kind of finally, I guess I want to bring us to this layer which pulls more from the life format, right? The immersion in practice and having a life that is immersed in practice. Practice, for me, is the great equalizer. We can have a really great conversation about theories. We can have a really, really great, heady, sort of serious conversation about what we think about stuff. My favorite disapproval, I guess, of non-contradiction, right, which is a pretty foundational concept in philosophy, right, the law of non-contradiction, that a thing can't be two things at once. A body can. A mind can. I know because when I look around me, I see the infinite variation of humans. We are all, whether we like it or not sometimes, the sum of our practices. What we practice regularly is what we become. So again, we can have a really great conversation about philosophy. We can have a really great conversation about an idea. Maybe the thing I never fully appreciated in my own learning was that the question I was constantly asking was, how do I use that? What's the function of it? I asked the question fully expecting a real answer. Not out of some, aggressive, kind of doubtful sort of orientation to my asking of the question. But a lot of times, I had teachers that I deeply respected enough to have them openly tell me or be willing to allow me to ask, what do we do with this thing now? And because I come at this from the martial arts, because I come at this as, a non-classically trained person, an autodidact in a lot of instances, I never fully allowed myself to pull myself away from, how do I use this? What's the use of this? What's the function of this? Can I get good at it? Right? Because if I can use something, that means I can get good at using it. Unskillful use is dangerous. Skillful use is beautiful. It is worth practicing to achieve. And so because of this framework, a lot of the things that we're going to talk about in this channel's future, but just in my future and what I've really spent a lot of my time trying to explore through my studies, is how do I apply it? How do I make it real? And so in this moment, practice is something we are all being called to struggle with. The practices that we have inherited, the practices we have received, in many instances are unconsciously received. If we are the sum of our practices, if we do become our practices, is it enough to have unexamined practices? Is it enough to say, this is just the way it's done, so this is the way I'll do it? Or is it maybe not just okay, but perhaps a requirement of our times that we don't fall back on the typical answers. I'm not going to say old because I would be the first person to disprove that in practice, which is I derive as much wisdom as I possibly can from the past. But I don't derive my future from it. And so our practices can be gained through our efforts. Our practices can be given to us, right? Many people who are born into a religion stay that religion if they continue along their religiosity, the religious path. But much less likely do we go looking for a religion somewhere else and find something that calls to us, right? Because a lot of this comes down to tradition and habit and, well, this is just the way it's always been done. That's enough on a child level of understanding of practice, right? The uninitiated level of practice is, this is what they told me to do, and so this is what I'll do. Any practitioner seeking to gain skillfulness in life, in human life with human body, oftentimes is called, once they have mastered a center, right? Once they feel like they have, as my teacher used to say, a black belt is a master of the basics, right? So once I've mastered some of the basic functionalities of my practice, whatever that is for me, I move outward because the human mind is curious. We are naturally little scientists, always trying to piece things together. As we go forward, as we go forth, seeking new knowledge now, not as a way of saying, how do I destroy what has been, right? Because through practice, we always have to break down the old. I always have to be willing to look at myself, right? Movers in particular who grow up moving in mirrors know this. I have to be able to look at what is, see what's missing, change the movement, modulate my practice in some way to just be ever so different. But that little difference means a lot in aggregate. It's the same thing. We have to be willing to see our practice, to modulate our practice based on what we see, and then grow as a result of that practice because we are what we do regularly. So I adjust my practices so I can adjust myself over time. I adjust my orientation to reality because I want to adjust myself and my orientation over time. I can't change today, but today I can work toward my change. And as one of my very, very early idols said, right? Be the change we wish to see in the world. Our challenge in this moment is practice and practical. There are real things that have to change. There are real things that have to shift, like a body, like a mind, like a heart. And in reality, things change over time. And the way we change over time is through practice. My teachers have said it to me. I've heard many wise people say it. Be careful what you practice. You will get good at it. Be careful what you get good at, because then you got to use it. And so, in this time, in this place, in this moment, I am always deeply grateful for the opportunity to continue to move my body, to move my mind, to connect with my heart. And those practices of growth, those practices of self-stewardship, are my self-love. Right? That is the love I give myself, is my loving, humble practice, saying, if this is really where we want to go, the only way we get there is practice. I'm going to acknowledge that I'll fail, kind of all the way up until I succeed. It's necessarily true. And so failure, practice, these things go hand in hand. Humility and practice, these things go hand in hand. Practicality and practice go hand in hand. We seek to optimize, we seek to increase functionality, we seek to increase capability, capacity, based on the individual inspiration. What is it that holds your passion, holds your heart's attention? Those are the things that call us to practice. Those feelings allow us to say practice is not a burden, but a gift. And so, from me to you, I wish you all a beautiful day of practice, beautiful day of humility, beautiful day of growing, becoming. And I'd love to hear about what practices, whether physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, you have engaged with over time and how they may have changed your life. Thank you so much for your time. Be well.